I wouldn't say that I found Ride With Your Mind, but I think Ride With Your Mind found me. And it happened 16 years ago that I was already coaching, and I was already a level 2 coach, and all of a sudden somebody came to my property and asked me, could they run a Ride With Your Mind clinic at my yard? And I said, yeah, okay. And they said, oh, and you can take part in it for half price if you want to. And I said, okay. And so I had this lesson, and throughout the whole lesson I was thinking, this is the weirdest lesson I have ever had. She hasn't once mentioned my horse. She hasn't talked about it whatsoever. She just keeps talking about me and telling me to do weird stuff. And I thought, well, I'll just get through this lesson, and then that will be the end of it. But then I watched her working with my students, and I went, hang on a minute. She's getting results that I couldn't get. She was getting changes in my riders that I'd been trying to get them to do, but I just wasn't getting it. And so I was like fascinated, what am I missing that she's got? And luckily she was staying with me. Her name was Anna Gordon, and she was one of Mary's top coaches. And so I questioned her, and before she left, she had the deposit in her hand, in a cheque, for me to go to teacher training in the UK. And I just knew this is something that's massive. I have to follow this. I remember my husband saying at the time, why on earth are you doing this? And I said, you just don't understand. This is a door that's opened. I have to run through it. And it was one of the best things I ever did, because I feel at that time I was really stale in my coaching and my riding, and this fed a hunger that was just absolutely massive in me and has never stopped feeding me. So Mary is an interesting person. She started off by training to be a British Horse Society instructor. She got her AI and then went on to become an instructor, but really struggled, really struggled with it. And she felt like the other people could get it, but she couldn't. And it was a really hard job for her to get there. She wasn't a talented rider, and every time a coach would come into the arena and would say, right, let's get these horses on the bit, Mary's heart would sink, because she knew she was really going to struggle to get the horse on the bit. And so after she got a British Horse Society instructors, she actually left coaching. And she went off and tried doing, I think, a little bit of, she was thinking about being a physio, and that didn't work. And then she went off and started working with the inner game of tennis and the inner game of golf, and realized the way that they were coaching could really work well in riding. And so then she went into NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. It's language, it's the way things are said. And so she went back to coaching, and that was the start of Ride With Your Mind. So Mary experimented with the way she said things. She started creating Ride With Your Mind, and the reason she called it Ride With Your Mind was because you have to mentally process what you're doing with your body. You have to think about what was the thing that made it happen so well. How are you feeling in your body at that time? What are your feet doing? What are your legs doing? And she started going into it deeper and deeper, and it's been a life journey. And I've got to say that Mary was really tagged as a person that was weird. And I think, in a way, she was weird for her time. She was ahead of her time, and so was Sally Swift. They were way ahead of their time. It's quite common knowledge now, but these two ladies came in with a totally different thought and way of doing things. So Mary has now written 7 books on Ride With Your Mind. I've got most of them here, I just haven't got The Good of the Horse. you can all have a little look through them. Her latest book is really exciting because it's about the fascia trains, and it's basically, I think, giving Mary the answers for why some of her stuff worked. Why is it that if she told them to do something with their toes, it affected something else in their body? And so this is a really exciting book, and she's done a lot of work with Thomas Meyer, who is an absolute expert in myofascia trains and is world renowned. So what is Ride With Your Mind? Ride With Your Mind is also taking things into detail, splitting it down so the person understands. So it's almost like taking away the mystery of riding. And you'll find that sometimes you get told, half halt. Okay, half halt the horse. But everybody assumes you know how to half halt. There's so many assumptions made in riding, and often you don't know. I mean, I still think I'm still learning how to half halt. There's so much to the half halt. And so, you know, when you start to know all the detail, it splits it down into bite-sized pieces so that the half halt can be fully understood, what's happening, what you have to do in your body. And when you get told, use your core, well, how do you use your core? There's, again, so many assumptions that you will know how to do that. So, as a Ride With Your Mind coach, we go into the detail. We make the rider more aware to feel the detail, to feel what the horse is doing. And I had a lovely moment with a student a while ago, and she said to me, the trouble is, I feel so much. And that to me was such a reward, because it's taken us a few years for her to get to that point that she feels so much detail in the horse and in herself now that she can manage that and organize it. When we also give bite-sized pieces, we try to not overwhelm the rider by giving them too many pieces, because the brain can only hold between 3 and 7 pieces of information. So we will usually go for 3 to 5 pieces in a lesson, and we will keep working with those pieces and working with those pieces until it's become more automatic with the rider. Whereas I think we've all had lessons where you go in and you have a lesson, and the coach will tell you in detail, step by step, what to do. Do this, do that, do that, do that. And you're doing it. But the coach is teaching you like they're riding the horse themselves, with their own body, with their own understanding, with their own feel sense. And often the student doesn't have that. And so we go into finding out the detail of what does the rider know, what does the rider feel. Let's just split it back. And I always say to riders, I apologize if I'm asking you things that you already know, but I need a baseline to find out where you are. So that's another thing that's really important. We also coach in a way that we find out how the student learns. So does the student learn visually? Do they learn kinesthetically with feel? Or are they an auditory student? And there's 2 ways that we can pick up on this. Number 1 is with the language. So if they say, I can feel that, yeah, okay, this one's a kinesthetic rider. She goes through feel. If they say, I hear what you're saying, they listen, they're more of an auditory learner. And if they say, I see, yeah, I see, then it is more of a visual person. And the other thing is the eye cue. So as long as they haven't got sunglasses on, the way they move their eyes. If they look up, they're a visual learner. If they look to the side, and it depends whether they're constructing or recalling, but that doesn't matter, so long as I know they're auditory. If they look sideways towards their ears, I think about it, then they are an auditory learner. And if they look down, they are a kinesthetic rider. So it's a really good feedback, because then you can coach that rider in a way that works for them. It fast tracks them. Instead of doing it with a word that works for me, I have to use a word that works for them. And I will often say to the rider, and how does that feel? You know, if you're in that position, how will it feel? And a lot of the time they'll say, well, I feel like my tail is tucked right underneath me. And I'll say, good, then keep riding with your tail tucked underneath you, because that is a way, that's their words. They're not my words, they're their words, and it is going to fast track my teaching to get them to where they want to be. The other thing with a Ride With Your Mind lesson is it's really hands-on. We physically put the person in the place. And so we ask permission. May I put my hands on you? We will put our hand underneath a thigh if a leg is like this, and we will rotate the thigh and the ball and socket at the top to get their thigh, the flat of their thigh, against the horse. We will say to them, if you keep saying to a rider, you're leaning too far back, come forward, and they come forward about like more, and they're still not getting it, I will put my hand here and say, lean into my hand, push against my hand. Right, that's it. And they'll say, but I feel like I'm leaning right forward. I said, yeah, I know, but I video. And so in those first lessons, I do what I call an assessment lesson, and I video the beginning, before we change them, and then I video as I change them. And later, we show them the video so they can see, oh my God, I wasn't leaning forward. I was now at neutral spine. So it's really important that we work in a way that helps the rider. The other thing is that I always say to the riders, this is an open conversation. It's not that you have to sit there and be quiet. You need to be able to feel you can talk back to me. If I'm saying something to you and internally you're going, oh my God, this can't be true, this is the opposite of what I thought I had to do, and this is really awful and I just can't stand it. Oh my God, talk to me about it, because we can have a discussion and sort it out. And so we always have a conversation. I use headsets, but I have the headsets that the rider can talk back to me. And the headsets are really useful because I hear how they breathe, and that's coming later. So we have a three-way conversation. The rider with the horse, the rider talking to me, and sometimes it has to be four ways if there's a parent involved as well. Okay, so when the rider comes into my arena, there's a number of things that they will say to me, and I will always ask them, what do you want to get out of your lesson today? So I know what's on their agenda. It's not what my agenda is, what is their agenda, what is the problem? And there's a number of things that come in. The horse won't turn, or he's heavy in my hands, he's behind the contact, he's pulling, he's leaning on the left side, he falls to the right, he falls to the left. I can't get his head down. He's lazy, he won't move. He's too fast, I can't stop him or slow down. He's wiggly, he's all over the place. And he won't engage his hind legs. He's just lazy, he just won't do it. So the place we always start is going right back to the beginning. And so this lecture won't be with an overhead projector, because I don't know how to do that. That's the truth. My son said to me, have you got your slides ready, Mum? Do you want me to look over them? And I just laughed. And I said, what slides? I said, no, it's just me. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to have interaction. So you're all going to turn your hands like this. You are going to sit on your hands, and you are going to find your seat bones. Yeah, with it. Okay, so has everybody got their seat bones? Now, seat bones come in a variety of shapes and feelings. You can have very bony seat bones. I've got bony seat bones. You can have seat bones that are almost hidden up inside you in the muscle. So, you know, there's a lot of difference from one person to the other. Some people may be sitting further forward on the pointy part of the underneath, which is, there's a little sharper bit here, there's a little bit more spiky, and they may be sitting on that. So first of all of you go hollow backed. So tummies forward and lengthen your front. Okay. And then go round backed and slump. So can you feel your seat bones moving over your fingers?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Go in between the two places until your seat bones are pointing directly down. Okay. So when you've got that position, you've got neutral pelvis. And that's where we need you to be. You can take your hands out before you squash your fingers, especially those on the hard chairs. Okay, so now I'm sure you're all wondering, what are these little polystyrene balls for? So I want you all, I hope you've all got pens, because I want you to write R and L on each polystyrene ball. Good. Okay. Okay, and we've got them all marked up. What you're going to do is, you're going to put R underneath your right seat bone and L under your left seat bone. Round and side up. It's actually better on a firmer chair than it is on a cushion chair. There's nothing we can do about that. Yeah. So, what's really interesting when you do this, when we've all finished and we all stand up and look at the polystyrene balls, is the difference widths in the seat bones from rider to rider. So your seat bones sit on the long back muscles of the horse, on the inner edge. I've got the pen here. So you've got the long back muscle. Whoops, it's a skinny one. Okay. Okay, and your seat bones sit on the inner edge of the long back muscle. Okay. If you slide off the long back muscle, you start to go onto a ligament in the middle called the supraspinous ligament. So it's quite important for us to try and keep our seat bones. Look, over the top of that there is a big fascia sheet. So there is that protection as well. But you want your seat bones to stay as even as possible over the long back muscles. So just notice, do you want to slide over to one side of the little polystyrene balls, or do you find it quite easy to keep them underneath your seat bones? Yeah. You know, I mean, some people find that they slide on the horse one way or the other. Okay. And this gives real clear feeling of your seat bones. Now, if you just stand up, you can just have a quick look to see how different everybody is. Difference in width.
What's Sandy? Have you got any underneath you?
I have. One like pancake.
Oh, yours are very nice.
Funny, isn't it?
The narrower, more male shape.
Sit down again and just feel your sitting surface now that you've had those on your bottom. Yeah, pick them up. Yeah. You don't have to sit on them now, just hold the polystyrene balls, sit down. Is there a difference to what you're feeling on your backside?
Yeah.
Yes. It's like a hole in your backside now.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is what a lot of the popular stuff with the spiky balls. I've brought spiky balls and Franklin balls tonight. That's another thing that Mary's done. She never, ever stops learning, that woman. She is incredible. And she's just become a Franklin practitioner as well. And she's now going for her level 2 Franklin practitioner. Not because she wants to work with humans on their bodies or become a practitioner, just for the learning. So now, the other thing is, pick your polystyrene balls up, look at them. Are they even, or is one more squashed than the other?
So then we won't.
I always had up to the right. Yes.
Oh yeah, yours are
Yeah, well, that's quite different, isn't it?
Much less squished, much more squished. What, did they start like that?
I don't really sound like that. I think I switched them maybe.
No, my left one's
You're on a hard chair. I was kind of, yeah, that's right. And I was kind of just doing the switch peel with it.
So that's quite revealing, isn't it? Just sitting on these and giving you an awareness of how wide your seat bones are, how the difference in the muscle can change just by having that underneath. That's why all the people that have worked with me know that I've been working with spiky balls for a long time. They've had the torture of the spiky balls and have become to a point where they actually enjoy them. That they don't find them so horrendous anymore. There's just one other little thing I'd like you to do with seat bones is if you could just come forward on your seats like you're on a horse position, and if you put your hand, if you can get your hand underneath your seat bone or even one seat bone, and we all, including me, I used to say all the time, say heels down, okay? Push the weight down into the one foot that you've got the seat bone under your hand. And where does your seat bone go? Yeah. So every time, so you can all go back into a relaxed state again. So every time you're pushing the weight into one stirrup or the other, you're lifting your seat bone up and away, so you're losing the contact with the horse, which is a bit opposite to what we all believed. That's just physics. It's apparently Newton's law. So heel down. If you put it down on one side and you're pushing weight into the stirrup, you're going to push your seat bone up and away from the horse's back. Rather think toes up. If you want a line that's got more of a stretch down the back of the calf, think toes up, and that will stretch the calf muscle. Okay, so we're going to move through the body now. The thigh position. We usually end up, but I'm not having to do it so much anymore. I usually end up having to take stirrups up, and I'm not having to do that anymore, which is really great. We want about a 45-degree angle of the thigh bone. And the ball and socket, here's bones, rotated. He's having a bit of a problem with his joint. I put in this because this one is sort of screwed in, and I needed to be able to show people, so I did some surgery on him. And every now and then it sort of dangles out. But when you do the rotation of the thigh bone, it's the ball and socket that is rotating around. So like this, to get the flat of the thigh down. And that starts to get this little bony knobble here, which is called the lesser trochanter, down onto the saddle. So when you're sitting on the horse, you've got your two seat bones, and when you get your deep seat, it's these little bones that come down onto the saddle as well, your lesser trochanters. And Mary said that some of the old masters talk about the riders having 4 seat bones, and they were talking about the lesser trochanter coming down onto the saddle. So that's an interesting little thing for you to know. And your lesser trochanter is directly opposite this bony knobble on the outside here. This is the greater trochanter, and it's directly opposite and on the inside of the thigh. So, you know, a lot of us think that dressage riders have got to have long stirrups, and yet you're seeing it more and more that they haven't got long stirrups. And Mary's description of why, and you know, everybody's got their own beliefs on things, and that's okay. I'm just going to tell you what Mary says, is when you have your thigh at a 45-degree angle, it means you can span more ribs of the horse. You can stay out of what she calls the man trap. Now, the man trap in Mary's world is the hole the horse makes in his back, the hollow-backed horse. If you've got long stirrups, this is 2/3 of your body weight, is this piece, with the head and the arms. Dropping into the hole in the back. But if you've got your thighs along the rib cage, you can carry your weight and spread your weight over a greater surface. So with long stirrups, you would only be covering that distance, but with a 45-degree angle, you can influence this much of the horse's back and rib cage. And the other thing that Mary says, and again, it's really, when you're coaching, you've got to realize the words you say can mean something totally different to the person that you're teaching. So if you say relaxed thighs to a person that is low tone, they take their thighs off. And if they take the thighs off, they drop that 2/3 of the body weight down into the seat bones, into the horse's back. So thighs have to be on. Thighs have to be on. And what I did today, I just grabbed, this is when you would do this on the overhead, but sorry guys, I just did some pictures. And these are pictures of top riders, and their thighs are not relaxed. So you can just pass those around. The thighs have to be on to be able to suction the horse up. And so I had a student who said to me one day, I just don't understand why you keep telling me to keep my thighs on. And I said, okay, you know, let's talk about it. She says, because I thought my thighs had to be relaxed, and I really believed my thighs had to be relaxed. And I said, okay, come into the workroom and let's have a little play and work it all out. And so I said to her, sit on the fit ball. So she sat on the fit ball and she squashed it. And I said to her, that's interesting. I hadn't realized that before. I said, that's what you do to your horse's back. You squash it. And what you've got to do is get hold of it with your thighs, and you've got to stay out of that man trap. So you can't. The ball has got to, I'm holding this with my thighs. If the thigh, so the thing is that the talented rider believes their thighs are relaxed. They believe in their world their thighs are relaxed because they're so strong. And so for us to get to that strength of those riders on those pictures, we have to work like hell. I never stop reading and researching, and I've just read a great book that a student of mine told me to read, and it was called The Dressage Sabbatical. And she said that she went to a stable yard to work with a guy called Paul, I can't remember his surname, anyway, it's called The Dressage Sabbatical, and he was an American. He was a classical trainer and really very experienced, and when she got there he said, wow, we're going to have to work on your seat, and she thought she had a really good seat, and so she was like a bit, ooh, okay. Anyway, so he said, you've got to ride with more leg. And so she said, well, I thought I rode with enough leg. And he said, no, you've got to get your legs stronger. And so he brought out one of these old bathroom scales. And he wrapped it up with a towel, and he put it between her thighs, and he made her crush it. This was in America. And it came up 90 pounds. And she went, oh. And then the young guy that was working there, men have got 30% more muscle tone than women, okay? So they're on an advantage. He did it, and he got to 130 pounds. And then Paul, the owner of the yard, and his wife did it, and they got to 200 pounds. Now, I'm not saying that you've got to ride with that power all the time, but you've got to have strong inward thighs with your adductors activated to be able to influence the horse. You've got to get your inner thighs available and then soften them back. But then they've got to come back on. If the horse is dropping his back, you've got to be able to close those thighs, grab hold of him, and there's some pictures there of riders doing piaffe, and you can see they've got hold of those horses with their thighs, and they are picking them up. So that is really important, really important. When you've got your thighs on, you're carrying your own weight. If your thighs are relaxed, you're dropping 2/3 of your body weight down into your seat bones. Okay, so now the next thing is the quads. These muscles here, okay? You often see riders come in and they land in a really heavy way on the horse, and that's usually, there's two things. Their leg can be too far forward, but the other thing is they are probably falling back and their quads are not helping them come down. And the quad is really responsible for the down moment in rising trot. So if you watch people, I love watching people. I go places, if I'm at airports and things like that, I love watching them, and they'll walk in and they'll shuffle along, and they'll go to sit down, and they'll get so far, and then they let gravity take over. So that's their quads giving in on them. And if you do that, it means that you end up being weak. So I try not to do that. So you've got to sit down and let your quads carry you down. And that is really important in the rising and sitting trot. You've got to sit letting your quads take you. So notice the way you sit down into a chair. Does gravity pull you down at the last minute and drop you? So there's a number of different ways that I will change that. I will say to the rider, make sure their alignment's correct. The alignment is no different in RWYM to the traditional, with the shoulder, ear, shoulder, hip, heel. It's exactly the same. But we really make sure that we keep it, because often you know that when you start coaching, but then you sort of let it go a little bit. So we really sort of push the riders to make sure they keep that alignment. And then when they're landing, they're coming down with the quads carrying them. They have to get stronger. you've got to do squats, you've got to, we have a thing called the rising trot mechanics, and I would ask you all to do it, but I don't think there's actually room. And we put hand on the tummy, one into the back, and we tell the riders, okay, go down. And if you had dots on the front of you, one at the belly button, one at the sternum and at the collarbone, come up, keeping the dots. And then go back down, keeping the dots. Now when you're doing rising trot, the sit moment has got a slight lean forward, but this is just a good way for getting your quads nice and strong and the mechanics for sitting trot. So the hip joint does a movement forward and up to the top of the rise. If you do a small rise, you see a little rise like this, you're not allowing the hind leg of the horse to come forward and underneath, because with every rise and every sit, the horse's hind leg is coming forward. So rise into the top of the rise, and if it's going too fast, it's rise, pause, sit, pause. Yeah, so that's where you would want to be going. So now we're going to learn about using stomach muscles. So I think you all need to stand up. So the thing you're going to do, hopefully you can all still see me, is you're going to push your fingers in here, in your belly, where your bikini would go. Okay? And then you're all going to cough. Now, did you feel the muscles push against your fingers? Okay. So if you draw your tummy back, draw tummy back, and now push that muscle out towards your fingers again without coughing, or you can cough to get it. Okay. Now, when you draw your tummy back, you're activating your transverse abdominis. That's the deepest layer of muscle. And then, so Mary calls this bear out or bear down in her early books, and it's pushing the stomach muscle. You bring the wall of muscle back to activate the transverse abdominis, and then you push your guts against it. That's how she describes it. And that's got to be on all the time. Okay? This is the first layer of using your stomach muscles. Not just every now and then, all the time. And this gives you stability. So if you have a horse that runs and you suddenly bring this on, they suddenly start to slow down. It's also part of your half halt, and so you would use that also as you're asking a horse to slow down or do a downward transition. You would increase the bear out. So this has got like a dial on it that you can turn up the strength, turn down the strength, but it's never at nothing. Okay? So if you all find a partner, okay, and you have no bear out on, and you give them, now be nice to each other, okay, and a little push, just a little push, and see how it feels with no bear out on. Okay, and then the other one.
Sorry.
So, what, you know, when you get told, you know, often you'll get, you know, often somebody will say to you, just relax. They may be meaning relaxing your mind, but you must never let your body relax, because if there is too much tone, you can have too much tone, and you can have too little tone, and you've got to find the middle place. But bear out was one of the big discoveries that Mary found, and she found it by accident. You know, a horse suddenly started lifting and carrying itself beautifully, and she went, what did I do? And then she worked out, hang on, I did something down here. And you know, Mary doesn't just think this stuff up, she really researches. You know, she went and spent a lot of time with Kyra Kirkland and asked her, well, what are you doing? And Kyra would say, well, I'm not really doing anything. And then she'd go, oh, well, maybe I am. Maybe I am doing something. So that's the first stage of bear out, is the low down bear out. Okay, but as time goes on, you learn to bear out to your sides. And that means you push out sideways. Okay, so your hands are pushed to the side, and you start to get stronger to the side as well. Yeah. And then you can start to get it into your back as well. Spread your fingers here, and you can actually start to get the bear out into your back. This is use your back. And it's also, yeah, so there is different parts of bear out. It's not, and this is what I'm saying, when you get told to use your core, there's more to it than just use your core. You know, there's a lot more to it. And then there's the higher up bear out as well, that you get it up here as well, toward just below the solar plexus, below the ribs. A lot of riders say, how do I bear out and breathe? That's really hard, yeah. But eventually the breath becomes the bear out. You start to use your breath to engage your bear out. Okay. Yeah, so Mary discovered as well that using the bear out would get horses to reach into the rein. And so she talks about if when you're learning to do the bear out and you start to think, right, I've got to be really strong here, if there was a little hole where your bikini is and you were pushing fluid out of you, it has to come from here to make sure your pelvis is at the right place, hit the horse on the neck where the breastplate would pass over. And that may be a little bit too much information for you, but it's basically saying to you, if you're here, your bear out isn't going to have any influence on the horse because it's shooting over his ears, but if you're here, you have more influence of using the bear out in a positive way that pushes the neck away. And even though it sounds like that's a bit fluffy, it actually works. You know, fluffy or not, you work with it and you find, oh my goodness, you know, this fluffy stuff works. Yeah, so the other thing is that, you know, like I've said before, that often the riders will believe that they're in totally the wrong place now, and especially if you've got a rider that's slipping off to one side or the other and you get them in the middle and they feel like they're falling off the other side. What you need to realize is that the brain actually lies to you. And there is a thing called homunculus. I don't know if anybody's heard of homunculus. You can look it up, and it's an interpretation of what the brain perceives of the body. And so it perceives huge hands, fairly big feet, a big mouth and tongue, big eyes and ears, but this part is really tiny because this hasn't really got a lot lot of moving parts. It doesn't move, and it's a different muscle to these muscles that move the whole time. So when you're starting to learn to use this, it takes a bit of effort, it takes a bit of concentration because it's not a moving part. You have to think about it to start to make it work. And the other thing is, with the brain being wired like that, and the hands being so busy, is the rider wants to use the hands the whole time to get what they want, instead of pushing the hand forward. So it's just interesting to know that. So a little test on the brain, okay, because I'm worried you're all going to fall to sleep, okay? So arms out in front of you, close your eyes, put one hand up at 45 degrees, one down at 45 degrees. Now bring your hands level, keep your eyes closed, and open your eyes. So often what you perceive is not actually happening. That's always really, really interesting for people to do and be aware of it. So when we talk about shoulders and lats, we don't say shoulders back, because if we say shoulders back and boobs out, which is often what will be said, sorry to the guys that are here, okay, it makes the rider go hollow. So we would rather say lats down. So you've got a big muscles here. This muscle here at the back of your armpits is actually your lats. And so if you pull lats down, you get a strong, stable back. Instead of saying shoulders back, you could say shoulders and shoulder blades sliding down as well. And then the other thing that riders get worried about is round shoulders. But often the round shoulders come from the arms. And it's also a shortening of the pectoral muscle, the muscle across here. And so if you can't get this lengthened, you won't get your shoulders where you want it to be. And a lot of people, I just see that through life, we get here. The day-to-day things that go on, the emotion that you may carry, you start to get shorter and shorter and more collapsed here. So if you take your arms out, and I always say it's like I've done my fingernails and I'm drying them, that brings the rotator cuff further back, and then you can bring your hands forward into the riding position. So just be sure that if you're round-shouldered, are you round-shouldered or are your arms getting taken forward? And that just brings the rotator cuff into a different place.
Really feel it.
So we may say close your armpits at the back to get that feeling. We may even talk about arm cuffs. If you had instead of handcuffs, you had the cuff here and a chain, and it went to your lats, that would keep the arm further back on the rider. Okay. Yeah, so the other thing that you also need to think about is, and this is just quickly flicking back to the bear out, is the center of mass of the rider. And so you see a lot of riders that are very unstable, they look like wobbly, and it's like the center of mass is often really high. And so when you start to get this bear out lower down, it puts your center of mass lower. The other thing that brings the center of mass up is the breath. Okay, I'm big into the breath. Okay, it's massive. It's just more massive than you'll ever realize. So a lot of people will come in again with emotion that they've had in the day. They may come in, they've had a really bad day, and they're really tense, and the shoulders are up here, and the breath is up here, and you've got to actually think about where is your breath. And so if you all were to just draw breath in now, notice where does it go? You know, how do you draw your breath in? Does your collarbone come up? Does your chest lift? Does it go into your belly? Does your ribs expand out sideways? How do you breathe? Oh, you have different rib cages. You know, you have rib cages. Ideally, you want a 45-degree angle of the rib cage here, but you find some riders that have got a really steep angle, but that can be changed. You can change that by using the Franklin balls and going to a practitioner to get it changed. So if you think about your breath, how are you all going? Are you all getting a bit glazed yet? You okay? Okay, so I'd like you all to take in a breath and notice your breathing. How do you breathe in? Do you breathe in through your mouth? Do you breathe in through your nose? Okay. So, we're all going to get I'm not making it now. Okay. I've never been able to do it. No, never been able to have loads of
I'm afraid it won't help anyway.
What won't help? Hey, how are you? How are you doing? Good. I tried it. It was a video. I can't believe how many hours whatever we do.
Hey Becky, you're going to give us the demo.
Hello.
Hey?
How many more need balloons? Okay. More at the back. Okay. And so, did you all notice your breath? Okay. So now, when we've all got balloons, you're all going to blow the balloon up. Okay. And notice, as you blow the balloon up, how does it feel in your body? Where does your breath go? Does your chest lift? Do your ribs flare out? Does it go down to your tummy? How does it work? Okay, so everybody got balloons?
Yeah.
Okay, and when you're ready, you can all blow your balloons up. There's always one. When you've got your balloons blown up, okay. So how did you do it? Did you find that easy? Did you pinch it off and then blow again?
Yeah. Well done.
Okay. So now all of you let the balloons down. Hold on to that one. You tied a knot in yours, didn't you? Okay. Now you're all going to blow the balloon up. You can't push it off with your fingers. You can't stick your tongue in your And you've got to draw the breath in through your nose while holding the pressure of the balloon in your lungs. You can do it. You can all do it. I know you can.
Yes, maintain a tempo in your lungs. It's going to take so much work. Okay.
Who found that hard?
Yeah.
So when you start to blow a balloon up by drawing the air through your nose into the balloon through your mouth, that is diaphragmatic breathing. And that's how you would start to get your bear out and your breathing at the same time. So you've got to, good riders will have diaphragmatic breathing. They will breathe in through their nose. And what's interesting is when you've got that sort of diaphragmatic breathing going on, it affects your vagus nerve and brings you into calmness. And yeah, so if we did that a few times, everybody would have sort of started to quieten down and find there's a calmness. Yeah, so it's very, very interesting, and it's good to really work on your diaphragmatic breathing. So you can all take your balloons home and practice in the car on the way home. Yeah. Okay. So if we move on to arms, so the arm, I always think of the arm. I used to do lots and lots and lots of lunge lessons at one time, and I used to make riders trot around for a long time with their arms up like this with no stirrups. Just keep trotting. Yeah, on the lunge, okay? And then when their arms were so exhausted, I'd let them drop their arms. And I said, right, now that your arm is completely let go, you can bend the elbow and bring your hand forward. So this has got to drop from the shoulder. The arm, I've got really veiny arms, so you're going to get a good picture of it here. There shouldn't be that, okay? That is too tight. There should be a soft tone to the forearm. The fingers go against the heel of the hand, the thumb is on top of the rein, and the fingers shouldn't be tight and taking the blood out of them. They should just be there, and the thumb is holding the rein. And that is having a softer contact.
Can you demonstrate to your leg?
Pardon?
Can you demonstrate to your
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so that, you can see all the veins, and you can see the tightness and the muscles really hard. And then you let go, and so that the tone is soft. The fingers go to the heel. The thumb stays on top of the rein to stop it being pulled through. And also hands can get really tricky with doing things like this. That's again a tightness in it, so you want your thumbs pointing towards the horse's ears, pointing forward. And a couple of other little things is the head of the rider weighs between 4.5 and 5 kilograms. So that has got to be keeping on top. But, you know, so many riders look down. And I'm one of those culprits, I can tell you right now. I know I'm one of those culprits. And often it can be that they've gone into their kinesthetic sense. And so you can remind them, but don't interrupt them if they're in process. They may be processing something, and then you can take them away from the process. So, and then you can say, can you carry your head up, but your eyes can go down if you need to process a little bit more. So I bought this, because this is only a 3 kg. And if you hold this, that's heavy. You can imagine that going forward, if you're looking down, how much influence it's going to have on the horse's shoulders and carriage. So it's a really interesting thing. This is only 3 kg, but the head is 4.5, and this is a fair weight. And another thing that's really, really interesting, and that I've made some huge discoveries with, is the jaw and the tongue of the rider. I was teaching a rider a few years ago, and she came and she said to me, the horse's contact's just awful. You know, just never stops fiddling with his tongue. It's just awful. I said, okay. And I watched her riding around, and I said, what's your tongue doing? And she went, how did you know that? And I said, how did I know what? What's your tongue doing? And she says, well, I've got a great big hole where a tooth's been taken out, and I twist my tongue and I put it in there. And I said, oh, well, can you take your tongue out from there and just lay it flat in your mouth? And the horse's mouth went quiet. And I went, that's weird. Why did that work? And so I had to go, I went back that night and I went, what on earth was that? And it's to do with the hyoid bone. You know, your tongue has got a connection to the hyoid bone, and the hyoid bone has got a connection to your shoulder and to your arm. So the horse feels that all the way down into the rein, and into the horse's tongue, and into the horse's hyoid, and into the horse's shoulder. So it is a circle. And I was like, wow, that is amazing that can make such a difference. And the jaw also. Riders, and we can all do it. We get into try too hard, and we start to clench our jaw. You clench your jaw, and you start to have a feel going down the arm and through your whole body. If you sit there and you clench your jaw, I can feel it through my body. I don't know if you guys can, but I feel it really strong all the way down into my sitting surface. So be aware, and if I've got a rider like that, I actually say to them, when you're competing, just chew chewing gum. You know, just keep your jaw soft and relaxed by chewing gum. Anyway, guys, that's it.
Well done.